Hey everybody, Tim Shea here with the Shea Group Realty of Keller Williams in Beverly, Massachusetts. I am here with another freeze frame market snapshot talking about how real estate market conditions are performing here in Essex County, Massachusetts. Now people always say to me, Tim, how is the market doing? And I say, well, that really depends on whether you're buying or whether you're selling. So I've got some key data to share with you that talks about how the market's performing and how it will affect you if you are in fact buying a property and if you're selling. The market has definitely shifted, and this information will give you the ammunition that's needed to go ahead and be well prepared if you are buying and selling. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at those numbers. First, we're going to look at Essex County single-family homes and condominiums. We're going to look at year over year, this period snapshot compared to 2017 in a couple of key specific areas. The first one we're going to look at is sales. And in sales, we're actually down 3.1% from 2017 to 2018. That's okay. Things are slowing down a little bit, but that's typical of the time frame that we're in. You know, we are in the holiday season, and historically, that tends to be the case where things tend to start to shift down as we get into the wintertime. I'll talk to you in a little bit about what my sentiment is as it relates to selling and buying in the fall season as we head into the winter months and through the winter season. The next is median price. This is an indicator that suggests that it's been a really good market leading up to this the last 3 years, which it definitely has. But the median price were actually up 6.7%. Median homes and single-family homes and condominiums are at about $400,000, the median price is. Inventory were actually up 22. So that's a good sign. Inventory is up. That means that the difficult market that buyers have been in over these last couple of years has been predominantly because there's been very little inventory. And so now that the inventory is picking up, it's starting to get itself to a more balanced type of a market, and buyers are having more properties to select from. So that's good if you're buying. Let's take a look at some more of these numbers. Pending supply, it's actually up 6.8%. What this indicates is what's down the pipeline for closing properties coming up. What's going to close in the next 30, the next 60, the next 90 days. So the higher that number is, it means the more properties are going to be closing. So that's good. That it still means that it's robust. Month supply, this is probably the biggest indicator that I as an agent look at to determine whether it's good for buyers or good for sellers. And in this case, if you've seen any of my past episodes, you know I've defined what makes a balanced market. If you look at the scale of 12-month supply of inventory, in 6 months, generally between 4 and 6 months, but let's just look at it as 6 months to give you some perspective. If you look at 6 months as a balanced market, it's good for buyers and it's good for sellers. Anything below 6 months of inventory is actually a seller's market. It means that there's very little inventory. The demand usually is in tandem with that, so that it means that it's good for sellers. You get top dollar, you usually get competition, you usually get multiple offers, and that's exactly what's happened in the market that we've been leading up to currently that we're in. It's been very much a seller's market. Very little inventory. The month supply has been very low, almost to the point that at one point, when we were measuring these numbers, they were actually below 1 month supply. It was 0.96. So, and that's in a specific price point demographic. So we're starting to see that month supply rise up a little bit more, which means that it's coming more towards a balanced market. Anything over 6 months is basically a buyer's market. There's lots of inventory. There's lots to select from, so buyers aren't having that competition. I think we're heading towards a more balanced market. So let's look at some more of those numbers. And in total sales, we're actually down just slightly to 0.8%. Now, if we look at that on a year-to-date, on sales, we're actually down 2.4%. And in median price, we're actually up. That's a year-to-date. That's from January 1st to October 31st. And that's what these numbers measure, with the exception of the inventory, which actually goes up to November 9th. And in total sales, we are actually up 2.9%. So all indications suggest that, and we've definitely seen a shift in the market. There's no doubt about it. It happened a few months back, where the analogy that I used was that it's like somebody took a cold bucket of water and dumped it on a hot sizzling pan. It went from being this varied activity for buyers and sellers, where buyers were running up against multiple offer scenarios, competing against other buyers for the same property. The properties were going for much higher than asking price, and sellers were really on the winning end of the stick, getting much more than they could have ever expected. And now we're starting to see that simmer down. part and parcel due to the fact of the season that we're heading into. People don't necessarily want to sell during that time, but also I think people are just kind of backing off from the market. Interest rates are rising a little bit. People are saying, is the market going to crash? I don't think anybody in my circle that I talk to, that I respect their opinion, thinks that the market itself is going to crash. I think what we're seeing is we've seen a general incline over the last few years of the market and prices going this direction. And I think we're just going to start to see it level off. Interest rates are rising. It's going to take some purchasing power away. It might push some people out of the market. But I think we're going to see prices start to stabilize. So I think it's going to be good for buyers and for sellers. Don't get me wrong, sellers. It is still an incredible market to go ahead and sell. And just to my point in the beginning of this, if you're thinking of taking your property off in these months coming up, my suggestion to you is this. If you need to sell and want to sell, now is probably one of the best times to go ahead and do so. For the reason being is that most people do tend to take their property off the market. So why not be a big fish in a small pond? You're going to have honest sellers during this period, and you're going to have really eager buyers. People who need to sell and people who need to buy during this time historically are the ones that are the most accurate. They really need to do it. They're not just experimenting with the market. We all know that there are people out there that are just kind of dipping their toe into the market, whether they're buying or selling. But in this period, if you're selling, you have an opportunity to be a really big fish in a small pond. And if you're buying, right now, you've got some good opportunity to take advantage of some deals where other buyers may have said, you know what, I'm going to wait till springtime to see what the inventory is. So it's still an incredibly, incredibly good time to buy and or sell. So let's take a look at these numbers a little bit further and break them down into different price point demographics to see where you really fall, because not everybody is in that same boat, and whether you're in a different pocket price point will reflect differently on how the market's reacting to you. So what we're going to do is we're going to break this down now into price point demographics. Same measurements, single-family homes and condominiums, but under $450,000 is really where it's the most competitive. Sales were actually down 9%. Again, that's part and parcel due to the fact that we're in the time frame that we're in. Inventory, we're actually up 18%, so inventory is starting to spike. I think there's always a lag between what sellers and people hear to what actually happens. So we're starting to see that little lag effect happening in the market right now. We've been telling people that it's been a great market to go ahead and sell. It's been a great market to go ahead and sell. It's been a great market to go ahead and sell. And some people, it just doesn't resonate. And now what happens is that they hear it and they're thinking, oh, I might have missed the boat. So they're starting to put their property on the market. So that's a good sign. We're seeing more inventory. Month supply, we're actually up 30.3%. So a smaller number, but we're actually up. The next price point, $450,000 to $700,000. In sales, we're up 18%, 18.9%. In inventory, we're actually up 28%. Again, a good sign. And in month supply, we are actually up 7.7% to 2.39 month supply. So we're starting to see that month supply number rise up as we get into the higher price points. And I think what you're going to start to see is you're going to see as we get to the lower numbers as we progress through the months, that month supply is going to start to rise as well, getting more towards a balanced, more neutral, more fair market where properties are still going for a good premium, but buyers are also getting good deals on properties and not having to spend top dollar, at least perceptually, not more than they think they should. Next price point is $700,000 to $1 million, and in sales, we're actually down 25.8%. In inventory, we're actually up 43.8%, and in month supply, you see that huge spike. It went up 93.8%. So we're actually up to 6.57 months. So at 700, really over 600,000, 700,000, we are 100% into a buyer's market. Buyers really, we're talking about a smaller pool of people, but we're 100% into a buyer's market in this price point demographic. So this is the market that's really kind of suffering the biggest shift and change in how it operates. Let's move into the last one, which is $1 million and over. We're actually up 6% in sales. We're actually up 0.4% in sale and inventory. And in month supply, we dropped just ever so slightly to 5.5% and to 8.11 month supply of inventory. So what does that suggest? Really, in a synopsis, that we are shifting from what has been a seller's market, where it's been very good for sellers. It's still very good for sellers, but it's becoming more equitable and more fair for buyers as well. It's not as so lopsided onto the side for the sellers. It's starting to be more balanced and right in that middle right there. If we break it down into different price points, really below 500,000 is, we're starting to rise up from a very, very aggressive seller's market to a more balanced market. And if you're above 500, really above 600,000, you're in a complete buyer's market, which is for sellers, you're going to start to see those prices either stay on the market longer unless you start to reduce. But as you get into those different price points, so before it was a complete seller's market in the whole overall market for the last couple of years. And now we're seeing that start to segregate itself off into different pockets of how the market's reacting. Above 600,000, you're really in a buyer's market. Below 500,000, you're in a more balanced market. It's going to start and move towards more of a seller's market. So hopefully that gave you some perspective. The biggest thing you can take away from this is that it's still an incredibly good market to buy, and it's still an incredibly good market to go ahead and sell. And if you'd be interested in learning a little bit more about what your property is priced at, I'd be really open to the opportunity to share a market analysis with you. And if you're looking to buy, I'd love to take some time with you to talk about what that means for you and what the expectations are for you moving out and taking those first steps out into home ownership. So you guys know, if you have any questions about any of these stats that I've just gone over, or any questions about any properties that are out there, you can always call me or text me, 781-789-5128, or you can visit me on the web at mistalista.com. And until I see you out there, happy house hunting. Take care.